Hello and welcome to another episode of Connection Alchemy. I'm here yet again with my dear friend Andy Hicks, who is a mindfulness coach.
Hello everyone.
And today we're going to be looking at the beautiful side of anger, or in other words, why is anger actually here to support us? Can we transform anger into an opportunity for deeper connection to the thing that we are caring for behind our angry outbursts? And Connection Alchemy, for those of you who are new to this podcast, is all about supporting you to translate those places where you get stuck in relationship and there's all this gunk and garbage between the two of you into an opportunity for a deeper connection. And that's why it's Connection Alchemy. And yes, I think we're going to start by looking at where we get stuck with anger, where anger can actually be expressed in a way that doesn't support us to be connected and can create a lot more disconnection. Very often anger can be seen as a bad thing, and we either suppress it or we express it in ways that definitely don't help the connection. Isn't that right, Andy?
That is right, Emma. Yeah, and I think it's important that you're saying at the start we're looking at the beautiful side of anger, because I think as a society we can often see it as ugly. It's bad, and it's something that I think I've definitely grown up with. When I first moved in with my partner about 8 years ago, I remember her saying to me, "It's really weird. Nothing seems to annoy you. It freaks me out." And I was like, "Yes, it does. I just don't tell you."
I just let it boil up inside and go,
Exactly.
"Fine, darling."
Yeah, I'm just always agreeable.
Oh, yes. Yes, and that can turn into passive aggressiveness or people pleasing.
I would say people pleasing for sure, and then it's the pressure cooker. A tick, tick, tick. Boom! Boom!
You never! You always! And the other person's like, where did that come from?
Yeah, I thought he was really chilled.
I thought you were Mr. Chilled Out Andy Valley.
Yeah, so I think without even realising it, I don't think it was a conscious thing. If you said, "Andy, do you think anger is bad and you should never express it?" I don't think I would have gone, "Yeah, absolutely." But that was how I was behaving. And I think it went back a long way, because I've always had eczema. I was born with eczema, scratched my skin a lot. And my mum used to say that my skin looked angry. And I remember being a bit angry with her for saying that, because I just thought, what does that even mean? How can skin be angry? But there are some people think that eczema is a expression of suppressed anger. So in recent years, because my eczema got really, really bad a few years ago, I tried to make a really concerted effort to vent more aggression. And I went on cycle rides where I was just screaming, like, "I want to fucking
Screaming cycle ride.
Yeah, in the countryside, not in London.
Shouting at the trees.
Yeah. It was really,
Brilliant.
really cathartic. I did boxing, I did judo, but also I've tried to make more of a conscious effort to say when something annoyed me. And I sort of realised that a lot of the time I would fall into these two different camps that we've kind of mentioned already, of either suppressing or exploding. And neither one of those is really gonna is the path to happiness, right?
Yeah, or it's not going to support you to connect with, the driver that's behind the anger, which is what we'll get to later. It just keeps you stuck in that angry place, that energy that doesn't allow you to move forward, because in a sense anger is, there's a wish for you to move forward with something. There's a reason it's a passionate, expressive energy, isn't it? Because it's caring for something deeply important to you. And so it's kind of like when we suppress anger, then we're not allowing ourselves to see the gift of what the anger is caring for. And when we express it in that kind of explosive way, again, we don't see the gift, but we also create damage. It's like a bomb, and the shrapnel kind of leaves holes in all of the relationships around us that are affected by that explosion.
Exactly. Yes. And what people don't always realise is that there are those two options, but there is a third option. There is a way of expressing it that creates more connection.
Yeah.
That means that we are connecting to, what we're trying to protect, what we're caring for. And that's often more vulnerable as well. It's connecting with something softer within us that maybe this explosion, this aggression is sort of hiding, is covering over.
I love that you say the vulnerability is actually what comes through when we express from that place, because like underneath that real passion, that power, that explosive energy is something very tender, very, very tender and soft. And so it's kind of like, can we move away from suppressing it whatsoever and be really authentic? And then we're looking at what does real authenticity look like when we take away all the pricks and needles and stuff that want to go outwards and blame the other person, and look at what's important for me. And so I think before we go into the what's important for me and what's on the beautiful side of anger, I just want to invite you out there who is listening to follow the podcast and to like and subscribe and do all of that stuff. Share this with people, because we really want to make sure that this work gets out to more people. And the more people that share it, follow it, and do all of that lovely stuff, the algorithm does some magical thing, which means it gets to more people, which makes it more enjoyable for me and Andy and the other guests who come on this show to continue doing. Because I think the reason that we do this work really is because we want to contribute towards change in the world, don't we?
Absolutely.
And so that's why we make the podcast. So please do share and like and follow. And yes, let's get back to the topic.
Oh, and hopefully it will also lead to there being less anger in the world and more people expressing from vulnerability and clarity and honesty and that more soft place within them.
Yeah. Or maybe not less anger, because I don't want to make anger wrong. It's less unfiltered expressions of anger.
Yeah.
Unfiltered and murky expressions of anger are what leads to conflict, war, and ultimately violence. Yeah,
absolutely. So is this a good time to give an example to make things a bit more concrete?
Yes, and maybe looking at sort of like some unfiltered expressions of anger, and then we'll look at what's the beauty behind that.
Yeah.
Do you have an example, Emma?
I have an example, Emma, up my sleeve.
Fantastic. Let's hear it. What's the example up your sleeve?
I was working with someone in one-to-one coaching who was describing how he was getting very jealous of his girlfriend, and the one specific thing that was happening is that she was texting her ex, and when he saw the messages on her phone, he got absolutely furious, shouting at her, getting really aggressive with her, and then feeling embarrassed and ashamed after. It's like, wow, I really reacted. I shouldn't have got like that. But then he said it would happen again. There'll be another trigger, and then he'd get really angry. And it was getting to the breaking point in the relationship where she wasn't willing to tolerate his jealousy and his angry reactions. So what I tried to talk him through is what might be underneath that angry reaction. What is it that you're caring for in that outburst and that expression of really, really intense feeling? And could it be something like that you care about her so much, and you care for the relationship, that the idea that she might go off with somebody else is terrifying?
Yeah, I can so resonate with that and understand that fear of losing the relationship.
Yeah. So it becomes like a strategy for safety, for keeping hold of the connection that you've got.
Yeah.
Getting angry, aggressive.
Yeah.
How dare you? Excuse me. How dare you do that? Never do that again. You're this, you're that. And I said, can you imagine how differently she might react if you express it like that, rather than with the anger? And he was like, oh yeah, that I'm sure she'd be able to hear that. And it was your teacher, Yoram, who I think expressed it to me very clearly, that there are certain types of communication that close our hearts.
And close our ears.
And our ears.
Yeah.
We're not listening anymore.
Yeah.
When they're like, "Rah!"
Yes. And can you share what those types of communication would be in this example that would close?
Well, in this example, it's aggression, blame, you're a bad person, you're doing something wrong.
So it's the you pointing it at you. You are doing it wrong. You should be different. You shouldn't do that. It's the shouldn'ts and the shoulds and the wrongness and the pointing outwards that make the other person. If you think about that, like anytime someone says you shouldn't, or why didn't you, or you're wrong and you're bad, do you suddenly lean in and go, oh, I believe you're right, and absolutely yes, I'd like to now hear how you feel behind that. There might be some occasions in which you do, but it's very rare, and most people, I know, speaking for myself, at least in the past, before learning how to listen to people when they speak like that. So now I do have the ability when someone says you to go, oh, what's behind that? Yeah. But generally speaking, we can go into defense mode if we're not trained to hear that there's a beautiful expression behind that judgment. Yeah. And so it's very unlikely that his partner would then lean forward and say, I want to understand what's behind your anger. Yeah. I care about understanding what's behind that. And she'd probably, my guess, is kind of like go into self-defense or retreat. Yeah.
How dare you talk to me like that? You know, you're being aggressive, you're scaring me, back off, all this kind of...
Yeah, and then when you're going to cheat on me and you're a terrible partner and you should be more considerate.
Yeah, so it just becomes this kind of battle that doesn't get us anywhere.
We'll get our like porcupine needles out.
Yeah, exactly.
Outwards.
Yes.
Self-defense.
Yeah, so which I've also heard described as hedgehogging.
Hedgehogging, yeah.
Yeah, when we stick our spikes out and no one can come near us. And what's underneath the hedgehog is this very soft underbelly that it's trying to protect with its big spikes.
Yeah.
And if you try and hug a hedgehog when it's all spiky, it's not going to feel too good.
Yeah. And at the same time, so really just honing in on that soft underbelly is kind of like, of course we're angry. It's natural to have that reaction. Yep. It's natural to go into self-defense, anger, to blame the other. It's not a wrong reaction. It's not a reaction that we shouldn't have. It's natural. If you look at in nature, and I've used this analogy 100 times, so for people who listen to all my episodes, sorry if it gets boring.
Not this again.
But I also heard Yoram sharing it in his own words, and that's why it's really stuck with me. But if you think of a mother bear in nature with her baby cubs, and she's walking around in the forest with her baby cubs, and her number one priority is to keep these soft, fluffy, vulnerable little cutie pies safe from being eaten by a wolf or another bear or another predator. That's her number one priority. Number two is giving them food, or perhaps both of them are one and of the same. Yeah, but that's it. That's her job. Her role is protection. And if anyone comes up to one of her little cute, soft, vulnerable little cubs, she is gonna break out those fangs and roar at you, and you're gonna hear the mighty force of that mother bear. And I like to think of the mother bear as the human expression of anger. So it's replicated everywhere in nature, and animals express anger as a way of protecting vulnerable parts of themselves and their tribe, their community. So within ourselves, we express anger as a way of protecting our own inner vulnerabilities. And so before we say what is it that we are protecting, I first really want to stay on that level of recognizing that anger is protecting something vulnerable, and therefore it's beautiful in and of itself. It's not wrong, it's not bad, it shouldn't be different. It's a beautiful thing to be protecting that vulnerability.
Yeah, and I notice in myself that I can easily slip into, well, you shouldn't be angry.
Yeah.
Your anger's wrong. Yeah. But also my anger's wrong. I shouldn't be angry. I should be able to be calm, and I should process it, and I should let go of it. And that it's bad that I snapped and I got frustrated.
Yeah. You should always be able to capture it exactly in the moment and do the process that we're now going to talk you through, and therefore express it perfectly, calmly and gently and non-violently. And that's the right thing to do, Andy.
Yeah.
And if you don't do that, then you're bad.
You're bad. You're not very advanced. You're a bit backward, you're a bit immature.
Yeah.
I guess we also can associate people who get angry with not having very much self-control.
Yeah.
It being a bit unpleasant or unpalatable, or like we maybe particularly as men, but maybe women as well, that we like the idea that we can be this sort of calm in all circumstances, even keel kind of a person.
Yeah.
And it's kind of embarrassing.
We aspire to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, as like more enlightened or more kind of adult,
professional, mature.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think I just wanted to say, like, again, we need anger very often in order to assert our boundaries. You know, and it's not that our boundaries can only be asserted through anger, but all sorts of uncomfortable emotions bring us in contact with our yes and our no. But, you know, if someone were to just grab my child in a way that didn't feel safe, it's natural for me to get angry with them and to say, please don't touch my child, or not even please, I'd rather you don't touch my child in that way, can you remove your hand, you know? And it's okay if that comes with a charge to it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So anyway, Andy, let's look at the example that you brought. So this client of yours came, he was expressing his jealousy and upset that his partner was texting her ex-partner. And how did he then go about, how did you find the beauty behind that, and how did he then express? I mean, because you already said that you suggested that to him.
Yes.
Did you then move towards an expression that was supportive in that communication?
Yeah. So coming back to this analogy of the heart, or maybe it's not even an analogy, the heart, communication that makes the heart close versus open.
Yeah.
Suggesting this way of communicating from the thing that he was trying to protect, the loving connection, the relationship, that what he cared about so much was being with her, and expressing that from this is what matters to me, rather than that you're doing something wrong. It was something that immediately it felt more possible and to him to say, and more likely that it was actually going to create the connection. And also, it's on the level of like getting what you want. But anger very often doesn't get us what we want.
It gets us further away from it.
Yeah.
So often.
Give me this! And it's like, no, I'm not giving you that. Absolutely. I'm going to give you the opposite of that.
Yeah.
Whereas when you come from that softer place of like, when you text him, I just feel so scared that you're going to leave me, because it makes me worry that actually you're more interested in him than me. Something she might be more willing. She was more willing to hear and to respond and to be sympathetic to what he was asking, because he was saying it from that more vulnerable, softer, more loving place, you could say, maybe.
And just hearing you say that, I'm getting in touch with the possibility that I don't know whether you discussed this with your client, but my guess is, because this might be a situation that many people listening can resonate with, being on either her side or his side, or both sides in different moments of life. And I'm imagining myself in a similar situation, that anger is actually, if I were to filter it, I would be saying, yeah, I'm afraid that you're going to leave. And actually there's a hidden request in there for reassurance. What I really want is the reassurance of my partner that even though you're texting your ex, you're going to stay with me, or you love me, and that you're texting them is not because there's something not good between us, and that I somehow want that reassurance. And if I don't ask for that, then I'm trying to ask for it through blame and judgment in the anger. So it's almost like you said, I'm not getting what I want. What I want is the reassurance, but instead I say, you shouldn't be doing that, and you're not considerate and you don't care, when actually what I'm trying to say is, I'm really afraid that you're going to leave me, and I just need some reassurance that even though you're choosing to text them, that you still love me, or our relationship is good. Or maybe I want some clarity, like, is there stuff going on between us that you're not telling me, and that's why you're texting him? And like, it's getting clear on what is it that I really want and care for that's behind my protection. So I wonder if we can take a look at another example before inviting those who are listening into an experience themselves of finding the beauty behind your anger. I've got an example myself, which is one that is very reoccurring.
For many years
with a certain family member, who, when this family member quite lovingly asks me how I am about a certain area of my life, which I won't expose because I want to protect privacy here for me and that person. But they ask me about a particular part of my life quite regularly. And when I answer them with my honesty in any way that's not an absolute celebration, like in any kind of way where there might be sadness or disappointment or this thing isn't working for me, they ask me, and as soon as I start expressing, I might be one sentence into my self-expression saying, oh, well, this isn't working out, or I'm finding that difficult. I'm like 1 or 2 sentences in, and their response is, why don't you do this? Or have you thought about doing that? And you know what you should do? Or that reminds me of. And I used to get infuriated with that. It would drive me mad. I would get so angry, and my response would be something like, right, well, you don't really want to listen to me, do you? And in fact, you don't really care. You just want to tell me what you think is best for me, and you're not really able to listen. So from now on, I'm not going to share. And I would even go into this like reverse blackmail or something like, well, now I'm definitely not going to share with you because you don't know how to listen.
Whoa.
So like my anger would turn into this kind of like spiteful, revengeful, I want you to hurt because I'm hurt that you're not listening.
And how would they react when you said that?
Well, they would get defensive and hurt themselves. They would go, I'm just trying to help. Like, I just have all these ideas, and I have all this wisdom, and I have all this life experience that I want to share with you. And when I hear that you're not doing well and that's hard for you, I want to help you.
Yeah. So this actually sounds very kind of moving when you hear it like that.
Yeah.
But imagine you didn't hear it like that at all.
No.
Like, oh, that's so sweet. They really want to help me.
Yeah, well, instead I heard it as you just want to talk. You don't actually care about hearing how I am. You just want to express yourself. So I can't trust you. I can't trust that you actually care about how I am. And I think behind that anger, because obviously this was a reoccurring thing, so I really needed to look into it deeply in order to undo the place where I got really stuck in that repetitive cycle of responding to them in that way. And I found that underneath my angry response, I was protecting a very vulnerable part of me that wants to know that I matter to that person, that actually they truly care about me. And I was attached to the idea of them listening to me as a way of me knowing that they really care deeply. And I wanted to be heard. I wanted to be heard and held in that space, in that relationship. And once I actually expressed that to them, and I was able to say to them that, like, I can see that their advice and ideas are an attempt to show me that they care. And yet, without me having more space to express how I am, I'm not ready or willing or able to receive any of them because I haven't expressed myself. I haven't been heard. And so it's hard for me to receive their care when it just comes as an immediate response of advice giving. Once I shared that with them a few times, without an expectation for them to suddenly change, they naturally did change.
Wow.
And now I am actually able to have those conversations with that person. And if a reoccurring situation comes where they come with advice, either I've changed in being more receptive earlier on, because it's no longer a defense mechanism that's defending this part of me that never feels heard, never feels understood, is absolutely starving to know that she matters. Because I've experienced now many times where I am being heard and understood, and I do know that I matter. So she's less defensive, she's less there. So either I can relax into this kind of like, okay, I can hear one or two pieces of advice now, or I just remind them that, like, I'd love to just speak for 5 minutes and then see if I'm willing to hear your advice. And actually, maybe I won't be willing to hear any of it.
Yeah.
And are you still wanting to hear me, even if I am not ready to hear your advice? And yeah, it's changed.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's actually very inspiring, especially that it's a family member, because I think there's often an assumption that family dynamics are kind of permanent or stuck. Like, if your parents or your siblings are a certain way, that's just how they are. If you have a relationship that's annoying or just unsatisfying, that's just how it is.
Yeah, and you just have to like it or lump it.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah.
Well, I definitely prescribed to that belief for a very long time. And when I first started learning nonviolent communication, I used to say, it works for everyone except your family. And now I start my workshops by saying, the reason I teach this is because it works with family.
Right.
It's actually... It's changed my family relationships. And I when I say changed, I came from a family where there was a lot of love and a lot of connection. But it changed the places where, like every family, we got stuck. And I feel much, much closer to that particular person than I ever did, because of the perseverance with this way of communicating. And we still get stuck, but, you know... We know a bit more how to get out of that. And when the anger comes, it's like, can we get curious? What am I protecting? What's important to me?
That's really inspiring, Emma. And also, I'm interested by what you're saying, in that you expressed it a few times with no expectation that anything would be different. That must have been quite hard.
That was the hardest part. Was to reach a point within myself where I can express, this is important to me, without expecting you to change. And that took quite some internal processing. And I think sometimes I still jump back to that expectation. Yeah. It's not like it's permanently disappeared and it doesn't turn up. There's definitely moments when I still expect that person to change or be different. But the inner knowing of that doesn't help us here, and that the acceptance while standing firmly for what I need is what really creates change. That inner knowing is behind those moments when I lose that and I expect. So again, I kind of want to say that it's not about reaching some level of perfection where we never argue, or we're always able to express ourselves clearly, and we never get angry anymore, because that's just not human. I don't expect that of myself ever. Do you?
Sometimes, yeah.
Sometimes. Yeah. You do expect it of yourself. Maybe I do too, actually. I'm lying.
I can definitely expect myself to be perfect and to get it right every time, and then sometimes realise that that's what I'm doing. Yeah. But yeah, it's so important to keep reminding ourselves of that we don't... It's almost the paradox of we're not saying anger is wrong, and we're not expecting ourselves to communicate perfectly and get it right. It's not even about right and wrong.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's having an intention, and even just knowing that there's a possibility of a different way that might feel better, that might actually deepen that relationship, that might mean that we have more connection and understanding of each other, rather than just... Because that's the other thing about anger, is we could just end up being on a loop and having the same interactions with people. If it's our partner or our family member again and again and again, it's just boring. Yeah. Frustrating.
Yeah. And then we just recreate the loop again and again and again. And not just with one person. Very often that loop gets replicated in our working dynamics, in the way that we see the world. Like I often hear and I won't go into this in detail here, but I often hear expressions of anger in politics, I don't even know if I will touch upon specific things right now, but like if you see, even if you look at the, what's it called? Not the White House.
Parliament,
thank you. My brain stopped. You see the way in which they speak in the House of Commons when there's like a debate. There is the expressions of anger are coming with a lot of blame and judgment and like finger pointing.
Yeah.
And so then that infiltrates down into the public who watch those debates, and they start thinking, oh, well, you know, the Lib Dems, and when they said this, they were the ones who were wrong, or the Tories were wrong, and they're bad, and they're good, and this person's right, and this person's wrong. And then that gets infiltrated into, you know, it's everywhere. It's replicated. The system is the way in which we express ourselves is replicated in every relationship that we, in every way that we see the world, and every person that we look at. There's an opportunity for us to replicate that same pattern of thinking. So it's also, I like to call it like a spiritual practice, or maybe not even spiritual, but a practice of social change to be committed to this intention to find another way. Because if I change the way that I express what's important to me in order to stay connected, then that is going to ripple out into all of the other places that I connect with people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Should we leave people with something to try themselves?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, think of a situation in your life that maybe in the last week that you felt angry about, even if it was just a mild kind of
like an irritation,
frustration. It could be a big expression of anger. And think about what's underneath that. What is it that anger is trying to care for or protect? Is it a sense of safety in your relationship? Is it that you want to feel this person cares about you or respects you? Is it something very vulnerable that's underneath it? Anything you want to add to that, Emma?
Yeah, so imagining that you are the mother bear or the father bear. Yeah, like what is it that you value so much, a value of yours that is not being included in this moment that you're now angry about? So there's something that's really a value that you hold close to your heart. It might be something like respect, it might be honesty, it might be care, it might be love, it might be inclusion, it might be knowing that you matter, it might be reassurance, it might be something else. But what is it that's a value that's close to your heart that is not somehow being cared for in this event that you're now angry about? That's another way that I would look at it.
Mm-hmm. And what could they do? They could write that down.
Yeah.
Journal.
Yeah. Yeah, so I would maybe write down the situation that you're angry about, the person that you're angry with, or the group of people you're angry with, something that they did that sparks that anger, like an event or something they said that sparks that anger, and then say, what am I protecting? What's important to me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Nice. And then they could, I don't know, what could they do with that? Do we want them to maybe share it if they want to get any feedback about it, or just keep it to themselves?
I always welcome sharing. So if anyone wants to share that with us, I'd be delighted to hear from people. And maybe if you can actually write in the comments section of this podcast, then we can get a bit of a discussion going and see what are the things that people are angry about, what are we protecting, so we can feel into it a bit more together, feel into like that protection and what's behind anger.
I think that would be really interesting.
Yeah. Great.
Okay. Also, before we go, this is something that I help people with one-to-one. It's often been men actually that are having angry outbursts in the relationship, and it's getting to the point where their partner is wanting to maybe walk away. Their relationship is kind of a breaking point. And I've been able to help people many times to just find these different ways of expressing how they feel, as well as having an opportunity to offload a bit. Because sometimes it's the pressure cooker is they don't have an outlet to say what's bothering them, what they're worried about, upset about, anxious about. So that is part of what makes it really helpful as well, to do some coaching around anger. And Emma, what about you? How do you help people with anger?
Oh, well, as people know, I'm a relationship coach, so I often work with couples. It can be very often that couples come to me at the moment that they're breaking up, that they've either decided to break up, or they're close to it, or they're considering it, or they realise that if they don't do something about this now, then that's what's going to happen. So I support couples to reach into what is it that's important for them, and be able to express that to each other. And I do that in a very sort of intuitive way. So sometimes it's through one-on-one sessions. Very often it's through a three-way session where we meet together, and I support them to express in the moment, and to express that anger in the moment, and move through the filtering process so that they can actually say it from their heart. And very often the session ends with a feeling of tenderness, and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes we go, wow, there's still more for us to look at there. So it's an intuitive process.
And does it work?
I believe it works, but I have a problem with the word work, because work sounds like we need to fix something. So for me, it's not about fixing or changing or making it different, but what I experience in the sessions with couples that come to me, or what they have expressed that they experience, is a lot more closeness and togetherness at the end. A lot of couples have said they really appreciate that sense of understanding each other, whether they decide to break up or not. It's about creating that understanding so that we can respect one another and see each other, because we don't want to, even if you do break up, you don't want to break up with this kind of like FU energy.
No.
This is someone that you love and has loved you, and the whole reason that you're in a relationship is because there's love there and respect there. So whether you break up or stay together, you want to understand each other and you want to leave. At least in my last relationship, when we broke up, it really supported us to leave on a note of care and kindness, and actually it's the reason why we're now best friends, and he's coming to visit in a month with his new partner, and that feels all possible because we were able to communicate in this way.
Beautiful. That's very inspiring, Emma, again.
You too, Andy. And I appreciate you coming on the show again, and we're going to commit to doing this once every 6 weeks or so. So if anyone has a question around relationships or connection or communication, mindfulness, places where you get stuck with yourself and your inner world or your outer world that you'd like us to talk through, then send us a message, and we'd be happy to make an episode for you on that.
Your own episode, imagine that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.